Check this.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's Lee. Let me put my headset on right so it doesn't look goofy. We are going to embark here today on a 4:30 show, as we always do, for Be Encouraged. And we got a super special guest, and I'm going to bring on Tora to introduce our guest today. I'm really honored and excited to have this guest on. Tora, why don't you tell us who's going to be on with the show with us here, and we'll bring him on. He's ready.
Sure. So today I'm very excited to have with us Sean Perryman. He is the chairman of
President
of the Fairfax County N.A.A.C.P. Sean and I have worked together for years with local democratic issues, and very excited to have him on here to have a very wonderful discussion.
I'm totally excited about having him on. Thank you, Tora, very much.
No problem.
And here he is. Sean Perryman, how are you, sir?
I'm well. Thanks for having me. Thanks, Lee. Thanks, Tora. It's good to see you both.
It's an honor to have you on, my friend. I really definitely want to have a good chat about, kind of what's the atmosphere right now in our country. I've been, I'm pretty involved as far as, I've made a decision that I'm not just going to stand and watch things happen. I'm going to stand up when it needs to happen. One of my best friends, his family and I we're simpatico. I mean, his mom is my mom, my mom is his mom, my dad is his dad, all that. And, and I love Marcus. I've known him for freaking, good Lord, 25, 30 years now, almost 40 actually. And he's been up and down and through a lot of rough stuff, but he's always been such an inspirational guy to me. And I just loved him. I just loved him to death. He goes back and forth to Baltimore. His wife lives up there, but he has to be down here because he said Baltimore's going to get him in trouble if he stays up there. There's too much weird stuff going on up there just constantly. But, and we know that. I mean, we know that there's lots of that happening in cities across the country. There's things that are like that are happening here in Fairfax County as well. And I just want us to find a good narrative that we can all live with, something that we can. I think that I wanted to ask you this, and I'll let you talk here because I'm talking too much. I was very excited to have you on, Sean, because I really wanted to talk to you and get kind of the notice on what is the NAACP trying to accomplish, and how are they moving forward. I think my opinion or my evaluation of looking at the situation over the years is that it looks like we have come a long way. However, we haven't come nearly as far as we should be, as far as prejudice is concerned, as far as racism is concerned. And that's not just in the Black community. That's in people of color, economic structures, where the economics are not fair. They're not working out. And there's lots of different races involved in that kind of a disparity. But I would like you to speak to, I would like you to speak to this because I've been trying to explain this. It's hard for me to explain these things to people. I mean, I don't think I necessarily have the look of authority on this issue. But I mean, I definitely feel like that I do, but I understand that they judge people by how they look. And I get people who look at me and go, what do you know? Well, truthfully, I know a lot more than some. I definitely don't know nearly as much as I should, I'm sure. But I want to know, because I've been trying to explain this to people. Black Lives Matter doesn't mean that Black people don't think that everybody else's lives matter. In
No.
fact, someone was telling me today, you know what, we need to add the TOO right there at the end of Black Lives
Right,
Matter.
right.
I said, but that's not really what Black Lives Matter right now is about. It may have been when they first started it, but now it's just a matter of people of color. You know, tell me tell me about Black Lives Matter. I'm gonna let you talk.
Yeah. So, no, thank you. So, a couple things. So, Black Lives Matter, as a value, is really a value statement, right? I mean, it's
Yes.
a movement and everything else, but it's saying that, Black people and their lives are important to us. And why do we need to say that?
Yeah.
Because we look at the data, whether it's in education, in the health field, or in policing, we see that there's not value given to Black life, right? Even here in Fairfax County,
Mhm.
what we're dealing with in the N.A.A.C.P. with police reform, the use of force incidents for this year came out. Black people make up 9% of this county, but we account for 50%, nearly 50% of the use of force that police, when they use
Mhm.
force, it's
Mhm.
almost half the time against Black people.
Right.
So this has been true. This statistic has been true for nearly 5 or 6 years now, and nothing has been done about it. Right?
Right.
If you can only imagine if white people were disproportionately involved in police shootings or use of force,
Mhm.
politicians would do something about it because
Right.
they look at that as a constituent that matters. So when we
Right.
say Black Lives Matter, it's because we have not seen the value given to us by our politicians, by
Yeah.
our elected officials, by the hospitals, everything else. So it's saying enough is enough. This is the time to value Black lives. And
Yeah.
as far as what the N.A.A.C.P. is doing, we have a number of reforms that we put out, 8 reforms that we put out for policing. And we're happy to say we're working very closely with the county on this. One of them is data that they've been promising for a long time, and we've finally pushed them to release that data.
Mhm. Mhm.
But we're also calling for a number of other reforms. And then the next step on that, besides the renamings that we're seeing for these Confederate named schools, is real school reforms, making sure that our kids, all kids, feel safe in their schools, that they won't be harassed, bullied racially, or anything else, and that there's equity in our education. So those are the kind of some of the issues that we're working on at N.A.A.C.P.
Well, I think speaking from my experience, I worked at Falls Church High School, and then I also, as a safety and security assistant, I also worked as a safety and security assistant at Jeb Stuart High School. I left there before they changed the name to Justice, but they were in the midst of it when I left. They hadn't made it official yet, but it was already decided it was going to happen. And
Sure.
I don't disagree with that. A lot of people I understand, and I want to kind of shift gears to this a little bit, but I wanted you to know that the Fairfax, it seems to me from what the memos that I get and the information and instructions we get, we're getting. I had a double lung transplant last year, so I haven't been in school for 2 years. But what we were getting information wise, and what I've always lived by, and I think we already addressed that at the very beginning, is I try to make relationships with kids, especially those kids who are the least recognized. Okay. And I try to make sure that they understand that they're valued. They understand that they're loved. I mean, I'm happy to use that word, because it's important for young people of all races to feel like they're involved, they're loved. And I think that unfortunately with the one parent households, which is disparagingly high in the Black community, which is, I think that's changing a lot. The men are stepping up in the Black community, which I've seen and helped try to work with that as well. That's been an outstanding improvement, I believe. But it's still a problem. We have too many one parent households in that community. And unfortunately, in most all communities now, it just seems like that's a kind of a new thing. Not new, but it seems to be prevalent now in this society. But my question to you on the equity thing and the naming changing is, we look back, and I know there's a lot of people who are historians, black, white, red, yellow, green, all kind of historians that have spoken to the fact that we need to be careful about, going and taking out different types of plaques and different types of statues. Some of the ones they've taken down, I totally wholeheartedly agree with. I don't know why the government has freaking shuffled their feet with not removing some, because there's some definitely that have Jeb Stuart, for instance. He's the Jeb Stuart Raiders. And yes, it's innocuous feeling for the students and stuff who've grown up in the school, but the reality is this man hunted and hung black slaves all through and before and after the Civil War, and was heinous. I mean, in his approach to it. So this is a guy that should not be, promoted and said, "Hey, it's Jeb Stuart. He's great." He was never a great man. He was an awful, horrible man. And there are many other people in the Civil War that were. But what do you say to, for instance, though? Can you speak to General Lee, for instance? My understanding is that he even paid his slaves. I mean, they were slaves, and that's how he had to have that in an agricultural community. But, I mean, he was a pretty good slave owner compared to most. And if there's such a thing as a good slave owner, yeah, I get that.
Right. I think, to answer your question, I think the concept of a good slave owner is a foreign one to me, right?
It is. I understand.
You can't control someone's well-being. Look at where we're at now, and we're in the pandemic, where you have to stay home. You have all these restrictions, and it's depressing in some ways, right?
Sure.
Imagine if someone your whole life told you what to do, when to do it, and how to do it all the time, right? So there's no good slave owner.
Absolutely.
But that said, I think there's been some whitewashing of Robert E. Lee's history. He does have a very troubling history when it came to the treatment of slaves. But put all that aside. We can have our debates about historical figures and whatever. Yeah. Look at the renaming when these schools were renamed.
Yeah.
The first schools named after Brown v. Board of Ed was decided, when Fairfax was and the rest of the country was forced to integrate. The first high schools they named right after that period were Jeb Stuart and Robert E. Lee.
Yeah.
And that's not a coincidence.
No.
Fairfax famously resisted integration for close to 10 years. Black people had to, if you lived in this county, you're paying taxes in this county, you had to take your kids and take them to DC to be educated. So this is the history that we're dealing with here.
Right.
And these were the schools that were named during that period.
Yes.
And we're supposed to believe, oh, well, that was a coincidence. That, of course, we named them after these Confederate generals. So it's more than the history of just those individuals. It's the naming of it. It's the context. It's that. And people like to divorce it from that because it makes them uncomfortable.
Sure.
But this is something that we're reckoning with now, and we probably should have reckoned with years ago.
Well, yeah, and I agree with what you're saying. I've not seen, and unfortunately, this is one of the things that needs to be reformed and changed. We need to have better history told of what's happened in the past regarding everybody. There's lots of different things that have occurred that in our history that were horrible, and we need to. And I think there's a lot of people who have been trying hard, white and black, both across the board, trying to change those things. And unfortunately, when you hit all the bureaucracy, and you got somebody who cares about this situation, and this one cares about this situation, and then they have all their money givers. We know how that works, the lobbying, where they say, "Listen, I want you to." And I don't know why I'm doing a Southern accent, but they say, listen,
you're Southern lobbyists there. Yeah.
Well, you know what? Listen, I remember I worked in the United States Senate for about 7 or 8 years. And I do recall that the senator from Montana was standing outside of the carriage entrance of the Senate. Mm-hmm. And I used to be a smoker. I don't anymore. And that's not why the lungs went bad. But anyway, but I would stand out there and have a cigarette, because when we first started working there, you could smoke in the Capitol, but then it changed. So that's good. But I'm standing outside, and and out comes the senator from Montana. And I can't remember his name. He used to be from Springfield. Very nice man. I've met him on many occasions. He had a bunch of his boys with him, with their cowboy hats and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And it's Montanans do. Yeah. Yes, and at some point, they said to him, he never agreed. I never saw him going, "Yeah, you're right," or nothing like that. And he thought he was by himself, so he just wasn't going along with them. But he didn't admonish them for their comments. But he was saying them. They were using the them. "I can't believe you got to work with all them," and all this kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And I knew exactly what they were talking about. And it made me sick. And I was just like, and this guy especially, I wanted him to say something. Now, he didn't agree with them. He didn't, he just kind of listened and went, well, yeah, whatever. I mean, he just kind of listened. I didn't get the sense that he was in the same boat as them. But he wasn't going to, I'm sure these guys are big money contributors, and he wasn't going to tell them, no, listen, screw y'all. You can't talk like that. He wasn't going to do that. I guess he should have, but and that's where I am now. I'm like, you know what? When I hear something like that,
you got to call it out. Right?
I'm going to walk right down in the middle of all these senators and these big money guys. I'm going to say, hey, dude, that's not appropriate. That's not right. And it's completely not something you should be talking about as Americans.
Yeah. And I think when you think about the legacy of the NAACP, a lot of times, when you take these stances, people say, oh, well, why are you causing trouble? You have to stand up. And I think we're seeing people, whether they're white, black, or anything else, saying, look, this is not the community we want, and we're not gonna tolerate it anymore. And that's what we're seeing here. And we're seeing these reckonings with the legacy of the Confederacy. We're seeing it with everything else because people are saying we're just not going to tolerate that anymore.
Yeah, and I think do you see though? Does it look promising? Like things are starting to change to you?
I'm more hopeful than ever, but
Good.
I think that we'll see what happens in the emergency session in Richmond and how far they go. I think we need real courage here, and I think we need real leadership, and I hope we start to see that.
And also the educational system, we do have to revamp that. I've said for years, I wrote a paper on the death penalty and whether or not it's pro or con, and I was pro, but I said, but not at this point because the judicial system screwed up. We can't be sending people because they may be innocent. We found there's a lot of innocent men, especially black men. But also white and especially economic levels. We talked about the economic level. They think bring in this guy who doesn't have, he lives in this trailer or whatever, and they're going to blame it on him. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I gotta take off soon, but I'm going to leave you something that Brian Stevenson said to me related to the death penalty. Brian Stevenson is a lawyer for the Equal Justice Initiative, and he fights a lot of these death penalty cases. Yeah. And he said sometimes the state loses its legitimacy to give the death penalty. And the example he gives is if you were in modern day Germany and there was a large Jewish population there and they predominantly gave the Jewish people the death penalty. Here in America, we would say, what is going on there? Is this a leftover legacy from the Holocaust and everything else? Right. Here we are in America, and we know the history that Black Americans have in this system where we've been enslaved, convict leasing, Jim Crow South, the mass incarceration that disproportionately affects us. And even in the death penalty, what legitimacy does this state have to do this to this population? Right. We have to look at it with a skeptical eye just by the nature of the history of it. Yeah.
And I think we've seen that with judges, though, in recent times. They're very hesitant to throw down the death penalty. And I think that's a good sign. I think there's also a disparity, though, in life sentences as well without parole. I mean, I'm all about if somebody is for sure guilty and you know it and you've got to put them away and don't let them out. I'm like, I don't, rape, all those things. There's no excuse for that. And if you've got more than 2 or 3 legitimate witnesses, then I say rock and roll. Let's put them away so they can't reoffend, because they will. But that's a whole nother issue together as far as the criminal justice system is concerned. But I think that needs to be revamped as well as the educational system. And there's just a lot of stuff that needs to be revamped and re-looked at. And I wanted to say that just having you on, I would love to have you on again, Sean. We can talk more about
I would love to. I would love to be here when I have more time. And I want to thank you for having me. And,
my pleasure.
Thanks for your support to the Fairfax N.A.A.C.P. I really appreciate it.
Yes, no problem. I really, I back up everybody who's looking to make equality their number one idea. So anybody who's doing that, I'm for that 100%. So we'll talk more, though. I'd love to have you back on. We'll talk maybe sometime about reparations and things like that. I would love to talk about that kind of stuff. That's a huge one. So, I'm very interested in that as well. But thank you for your information. You've been a blessing to me today. And
thank you,
look forward to having you another time. And Tora, we thank Tora. Okay, sir.
All right. Bye-bye.
See you, Sean. Thanks. All right. Well, that was Sean Perryman, ladies and gentlemen, the president of the Fairfax County N.A.A.C.P. Good information, I think. It's stuff that people should already know, and they don't. They should already know what's happening with all that. Gary Black, how are you, my good friend? I'm glad to have him on to hear what's going on and listening in. Sean Lanier might be interesting. We might have to do that sometime. Billy Riley, I'm going to send him a notice, and I'd love. Oh, there he was. There's the name of that senator, but that's okay. We won't. Like I said, the guy seems like a phenomenal guy to me, but I'm no longer going to stand around, and I don't think he should stand around and let people say things like that without calling them out. Okay, so let's go ahead and send my good friend Billy Riley a link. He will come on, and we will talk about what's going to happen tonight on Nova Nation. I'm looking forward to it, and that's going to be an exciting thing tonight. Here comes Billy, if you're watching. Here comes the link to join me. I'd love to have you on, Fat Pal. Okay. Anyway, it was great having Sean on. I really totally feel very. I mean, I've really felt like, and I've seen it happen with my friend Mark. I've seen where he's been, not legitimized at all. He's been treated like he's less than a human being at times, and this is one of the finest men I've ever known. So I think we all need to step up and start bringing up that young generation of all of our youth and teaching all of our youth that we should be colorblind. That everyone should be referred to as by their name, not by their race. They need to be referred to and talked to about their name. The only time you should ever bring in race is when you're just like if you're talking about somebody's clothes. If you're looking for somebody and if somebody did something, then you say, yes, it was a Caucasian or white male, and you can say white male, it doesn't matter. White male with light, pale, or you say a white male with a darker complexion, a black male with white or light colored skin, or dark, dark chocolate, or just a very light brown. I mean, that's the only time race should come into play, is when you're describing somebody. Other than that, there should be none whatsoever, because if you find yourself, you'll find yourself discriminating. So unfortunately, and that's something we need to make sure we get away from in this world. Now, so folks, I've got lots of stuff happening. And we are going to try and have Billy on. If he doesn't come on here momentarily, we are going to, there's Tora, Meg, and Gary Black. And I've got people watching on More Joy Radio, More Joy Media, and the Liam Bailey page on Facebook. Please tell your friends and family that we are doing this program. I should have had a lot more people watching today because of having Sean Perryman on. And that was really a good guest to have on. Tora, thank you so much for making that happen. Billy Riley, you need to come on, bro. So let me send him another link and paste it on there so he can see it. And get him on here to talk about what's going to happen tonight. We are going to have, y'all, a very special guest this evening on Nova Nation. I'm building actually a new thing for that. And there he is, without question, the man of the hour, the man of the day, Billy Riley. What's up, Billy?
Dude, you do?
Hey, what about Sean Perryman, huh? He was a good guy.
Dude, he was
good guy.
Dude, that was awesome.
Yeah.
That was a really great show.
Yeah, I'd love to have him on more, so we can definitely talk, because there's so many issues related,
and
to
be encouraged thing is a good thing,
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
I just don't. My thing is, I just don't know where this ends. Nice discussion about Robert E. Lee. People don't know Robert E. Lee was married to George Washington's daughter.
Yeah.
So that's where he inherited almost all of those slaves and took care of those slaves there. So I'm in complete agreement. Slave owner, slave owner. But what do? Do we get rid of the dollar bill? Do we get rid of the $5 bill, the $10 bill?
Right.
Do we redo everything that was done on this that touched that? I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah, that's a very good question.
Fairfax City just changed the high school from the, it
Rebels
was the Lions.
Was
the
the Rebels.
The road out front, which was called Rebel Run.
Right.
But if you take a left off of Rebel Run and you turn into Mosby Woods, it's an entire subdivision that's Confederate Lane, Railroad Lane, I mean, where does it end?
I know.
So,
I know. Well, you know what? But I got to say,
least
there's so
there's a
many other
discussion.
people in this world who deserve to, that deserve some accolades. And why not? Let's change some road names. Let's change some.
Right.
I'm
I'm
happy
all
with
in.
my
I'm
tax
all
money
in.
going there. Yeah.
Hey, I'm all in.
Let's give some other people.
Hey, I'm in complete agreement that the John Crow days need to go.
Yeah.
Without a doubt, needs to change, but not anarchy change. I mean, they need to remove cities, need to remove all the statutes.
Yeah,
not
the government people, the people
Government's
in
gotta
charge need to
engage.
get on
Right.
it. Yeah, absolutely.
State of Mississippi is doing their thing.
That's right.
It's just time. So, anyway, you're doing a good work with that, Lee. I think it's a good show, and
talk to me about Nova Nation tonight, bro.
So excited about it, man. We got 3 rock stars coming on. Tony Anzalone will be on from Bianchi Carpets and Fogging to talk about, the need for that in restaurants and offices.
Yeah.
Danielle Daly's making an appearance. She's fabulous. She's going to talk about dating in the new world of dating.
Yes.
How race plays a role in that. What's going on across the board with that stuff, and then I think Ross McIntyre's joining us
from Patriot Bar and Grill. Yeah, right. That's great.
So that's awesome.
And we're only, why he's coming on more than anything else. Number one, we want to talk about what they've been doing in the community, but Tora wants to know. Tora wants to know when karaoke starts back up.
Yeah, he does fundraisers. He does some art events. We're going to talk about a lot of his stuff. He's a good guy.
We will.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I am. So at 7:15, 7 o'clock, it's me and Billy. At 7:15, we'll have Tony Anzalone from the Carpet Place. What's the name of it again? Bianchi Carpets. That's right. And then Danielle will be on, and then we'll have on at 7:45. We'll have on our man Russ from Patriot Bar and Grill. That'd be fun to have him on. Okay, we'll have a great time tonight, buddy. I can look forward to seeing you. I'll see you around 6:30. Okay.
Seeing you as always.
All right, brother. Take care, man. All right, bye. Well, that's it for us today, ladies and gentlemen. Be encouraged. We had a great program today. I'm overly excited about how awesome our guests have been today. Billy, of course, superstar, but obviously one of the guests that I totally was excited about having on, and I look forward to having him on in the future, was Sean Perryman, the president of the N.A.A.C.P. in Fairfax County. Look forward to having him on again. Maybe we can have ourselves a little round robin. I definitely want to talk. One of the things we didn't talk about that we were going to talk about is police reform. We touched on it, but we didn't get into any of the inner workings of police reform. So I definitely want to talk about that. And I'd love to have on maybe Chief Rossler or Stacey Kincaid, somebody on to discuss that with us as well. It'll be an interesting program. So stay tuned for that. All right. This is Be Encouraged. It is Monday. It's 4:30. Nope, it's almost 5 o'clock. And that's why we're wrapping the show up right now. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you again for watching Be Encouraged. Make sure that you like and share. I appreciate it if you would do so. And have a blessed day.
That it feels right.